In this podcast, we're going to talk about how to classify alcohols as being primary, secondary, or tertiary alcohols. All right, so if you watch the classification of carbons podcast, this is very similar. It's the same idea. We are going to look at where the hydroxyl group is attached. So we're going to look at what we call the alcohol carbon. So in a primary alcohol, the alcohol carbon is attached to one alkyl group or two hydrogens. So I don't think it's really easy to see this, especially at first when you're learning how to do this in a condensed structural formula. So you might convert this to a full structural formula or complete. I like to take the hydroxyl group and the carbon it's attached to, and I like to put a box around it. And so this reminds me that I'm looking at this carbon to make a determination of whether it's a primary, secondary, or tertiary alcohol. So attached to this carbon, I have one other carbon and two hydrogens. Therefore, this is primary. If you had methanol, a single carbon alcohol, that would also be considered primary, even though it doesn't have another alkyl group attached to it. So it could be two or three hydrogens attached to your alcohol carbon. In a secondary alcohol, your alcohol carbon is attached to two alkyl groups or one hydrogen. So it might be a little easier for you. We're looking at isopropyl alcohol or 2-propanol right now. Again, I like to use these boxes. I like to take whatever carbon is attached to the hydroxyl group and draw a box around it because that is the carbon that I'm paying attention to classify it. So again, in our complete structural formula, if I were to box that, this carbon, the alcohol carbon, is attached to two other carbons, or if you're looking at hydrogens, it's attached to one hydrogen to the alcohol carbon. So therefore, this is secondary. In a tertiary alcohol, we're again looking at our alcohol carbon, and we are looking at how many alkyl groups or hydrogens are attached to that alcohol carbon. So we can use our condensed structural formula, or we can use our complete structural formula, which I think is a little bit easier to visualize. So here's our alcohol carbon, and we can see that it's attached to 1, 2, 3 alkyl groups, and because it already has 3 bonds with alkyl groups and 1 bond with a hydroxyl, it has no hydrogens attached to it. So therefore, it's a tertiary alcohol.